Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kerem İskit, and you are watching What's New, What's News. As we are following closely Turkey's agenda, the new discussions happening around actually Turkey's possible involvement in the International Criminal Court against Israel. I have an international law expert, Dr. Kerem Gülay. Let me invite him because we have a lot of things to talk. Welcome, Dr. Gülay. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Glad to be back.
Thanks for joining me again as we are discussing a lot of issues surrounding in rule of law. Turkey is now a new discussion is happening at the moment because of the situation in Gaza and South Africa's trial against Israel, and now there is a possibility of Turkey might be involved in this case, as Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan revealed last week. And this is the case now. What is actually happening? Because everyone is very confused about it, whether Turkey has already involved or thinking of involving this case. What's the situation at the moment?
Thank you. So I'll start with a few clarifications. First, the case that the Foreign Minister Fidan was talking about is not the pending investigation at the ICC, namely International Criminal Court. Turkey is not part of International Criminal Court. Is not a party to the Rome Statute, regrettably. But this is the case filed by South Africa at the International Court of Justice. The difference between these two institutions, these two international courts, is one of them, namely the International Criminal Court, deals with international crimes committed by individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So the jurisdiction, basically the power of the International Criminal Court, is over individuals. So such as in the case of Gaza, for example, could be Netanyahu or Minister Gallant, or and so on and so forth. So International Criminal Court, and we also have some news at the International Criminal Court front, but more on that later perhaps. But the International Court of Justice, which is a different court, only deals with states. So in the disputes, in the cases before the International Court of Justice, only states can become parties. South Africa, as everyone knows, has filed a case against Israel for the alleged violations of the Genocide Convention, including but not limited to a potential commission of genocide by Israel, alternatively by failing to prevent genocide. So the case isn't, strictly speaking, about Israel is committing genocide. It's not just about that. It's about if genocide is being committed, and Israel also has a duty to prevent genocide. So it could involve potential failure to prevent as well. So Turkey, just last week on Thursday, I believe, Turkey announced that it is going to intervene in the case filed by South Africa. And the confusion, Ceren, that you are talking about, the confusion in the Turkish public discourse, including, again, about whether Turkey's intervention will be under Article 62 or 63, is mostly about that, unfortunately, Turkish media doesn't actually let experts to talk about this issue. A lot of people, including, unfortunately, lawyers who are sort of this media pundits, who express their opinions about this issue, are experts in different fields of law, such as criminal law, specifically criminal law, and other fields of law. And that's the problem, because the information they provide is inaccurate. I'll start with one example, which I also discussed in another interview with respected journalist Hediye Levent. Essentially, a member of faculty from Istanbul University, which is one of the oldest, I think the oldest public university and the oldest law school in Turkey. A professor, an associate professor of criminal law, Mr. Demirel, essentially indicated in Turkish TRT, in Turkish public television, that Turkey could not have filed the case itself because Turkey has a reservation on the Genocide Convention. Turkey could later join the case, intervene into the case, because someone else has filed the case. So this reasoning is absurd. It is ridiculous. Starting with the first mistake, Turkey doesn't have a reservation on the Genocide Convention. If you check the sources, namely United Nations Treaty Database and Turkish official Gazette, so these are the official sources, you don't see any reservation filed by Turkey. A reservation is basically a declaration intended to modify the content of international treaties. Turkey doesn't have such a reservation. So this argument proposed in Turkish media by the so-called experts, who are not experts, are wrong, factually and legally wrong. And even if, for example, such a reservation would have existed, it would have been relevant for the entirety of the case, not solely to claim that Turkey could not have filed the case at the first place, but can join later. That's contradiction. The jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice doesn't work that way. You either can become a party to the proceedings or not. So much of this confusion that we have to deal with on daily basis, unfortunately, is due to, first, lack of expertise generally in Turkey on public international law matters. Secondly, the lack of the media's and the state-controlled media's attempts to have just random lawyers talking about this instead of the few experts. There are some experts, of course, not just me, other people as well. But instead of us, people who don't have any expertise in this field are invited to talk about this. So that's the source of the confusion. I also heard, for example, from these circles that Turkey's intervention is likely to delay the proceedings. That's inaccurate. Also, so maybe Turkey will have to present its claims and plead before the International Court of Justice, but the case is filed by another party, namely South Africa, against Israel, and there are certain frame to these proceedings. So Turkey's intervention, when it happens, it didn't happen yet, is not likely to delay the proceedings significantly. So that's also wrong. Pretty much everything that they seem to claim about this case is wrong. And I'll give you one more example. The first time I met with the public, apart from my students, is shortly after the Al Shifa hospital bombing sometime in October. And I said that there is potentially a case to be filed against Israel, and any party can file it, including Turkey. And I was immediately being lynched by conservative press. Then I talked to a few journalists, such as yourself, Nevşin Hanım, Hediye Hanım, etc. And eventually, a member of parliament grew an interest on this issue. And Mr. Gergerlioğlu, member of parliament, he frequently brought up this issue in the Turkish parliament. Many times he brought this issue. He was targeted by other MPs. He was cursed. He was talked badly about just because he was telling the truth. He was saying from the stance in the parliament that Turkey has a right to file this case or intervene into the dispute members of parliament from AKP, from Erdogan's party, basically claim that he's lying and that I am lying. And they kept saying things like, this is in the official public records, and I have it. I can send it to you later on. They kept saying, this is wrong. Check the textbook. Things like that. So in Turkish they said, Türkiye'nin böyle bir hakkı yok. Kitaba bakın. And we kept saying that Article 36 of the ICJ Statute, as well as Article 9 of the Genocide Convention, are clear about this. They kept denying this. But it turns out that they had to admit their mistake. They are silent now. They didn't properly apologize, apart from a few more respected elders of AKP. But I suspect that with human resources, with a capital, human resources capital like that, it's very difficult for Turkey actually to deal with this case, because you need professionals to work on the request for intervention. I can talk, if you want, about how Turkey dealt with these issues in the past in other cases. But for example, Turkey isn't very active in international dispute settlement before international courts. There are some exceptions to this. WTO, Turkey is very active, relatively active. Of course, European Court of Human Rights, Turkey is active because there are a lot of cases against Turkey. And then in international investment law in ICSID, before International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes, Turkey is very active. But if we look at who Turkey employs as its lawyers in these cases, for example, in high-profile cases before the European Court of Human Rights, sort of people from Foreign Ministry, of course, prepare Turkey's responses to the cases. But for example, in the case of Demirtas, Selahattin Demirtas, Turkey, if I recall correctly, chose a British lawyer to represent Turkey. We paid a lot of money to this individual, and of course he's a professional. He was very willing and ready to take the case, and he said he will do his best, I am assuming. But this case was going to be decided in the ways in which it had been decided. Turkey was on the wrong side. It did a lot of procedural and substantive missteps, and Turkey was going to lose this case anyway. So it just ended up paying a British lawyer a lot of money without necessarily gaining the benefits and having a proper defense. Then in investment arbitration, in international center, before the international tribunals on investment disputes, Turkey has a tendency to hire foreign law firms instead of building its own expertise at the foreign ministry or in the Ministry of Economy. So without having any experience in international cases, how are they in fact going to prepare these documents? They have no training on this. And last time Turkey appeared before International Court of Justice, it was 70s in the Aegean Sea Continental Shelf case, which Turkey sort of refused the jurisdiction, and Turkey actually so the court declined jurisdiction. And the last time Turkey, in fact, was before the court was the Lotus case, one of the first cases of the precursor of the present court. So this is not the United Nations era, this is the League of Nations era. So and more recently, and I'm talking about 20s, 30s, early 30s, 1930s. None of that experience still lives. And Turkish politicians from 1950s onwards did a lot to sort of kill that expertise. The famous lawyer Mahmut Esat Bozkurt, who was responsible for Turkey's win in the Lotus case, his textbooks were removed from the curriculum on international law. So so there are a lot of structural problems indicating that Turkey is as it currently stands. It is not ready to face this challenge, and we have seen this I believe in February, because Turkey, with this more interventionist approach, Turkey intervened in an advisory opinion. This is not a case. This is more like this is not binding. But it's of course very persuasive, very important legal document, but it's not binding. Turkey intervened in an advisory opinion concerning the occupation of Palestine by Israel, and a lot of states and international organizations intervened in that case. Unfortunately, Turkey's performance was suboptimal, to say the least. If and this is public, people can Google it and find it on the ICJ's website and UN TV website. A senior member of Turkish foreign ministry, I think vice minister, pleaded Turkey's case, and it didn't have proper references to international law. Turkey in this pleading kept talking about status quo without referring to what do they actually mean in terms of sources of international law. So this is information, very basic information, that has to exist in these proceedings. And just one more, I think I've said it all, but there's one more important thing. If you look at the list of people registered,
that's what I was going to ask you, whether if there is a possible involvement of this case, who are working on this case, because is there any kind of lawyers, international lawyers, international law experts who are working on this case? This is, I think, very vital and important, and I know you discussed this before, but to make it a clarification on that,
sure.
Who are working with it? Do you know who is on this case now?
Sure. I don't have insider information, but I know which people worked in Turkey's previous intervention in the advisory opinion I just mentioned. There was a list of 5 or 6 people. Of course, Turkey might have used more people in the drafting of the document, but those people who were officially registered as counsels for Turkey, there are 6 people, I think. Only one of them is a lawyer. Yes, and his expertise is not on international law. His PhD is on private law. So he's an expert in real property. He can be an expert in rental contracts or I don't know, civil procedure maybe. But he isn't even a public law expert, let alone a public international law expert. So he has apart from working for the ministry and apart from perhaps having international law in the undergraduate studies, sort of 2 courses for the entire curriculum, this person doesn't seem to have any expertise. He doesn't have any publications on international law, at least anything I can find on easily on Ulatbim and other databases. So maybe he's a very competent lawyer. I don't know. I don't know this person. I don't know his credentials, but he isn't a public international law expert. And so this is an insult to public international law community in Turkey. It's a very fragile community. It's not a very successful community. Not many international publications. There are some people barely speaking English. So I'm very critical of my own community. But there is still a community, and there are really good experts in public universities and vakıf universities, private universities. I don't want to use the name private; it's different. All universities are public institutions under Turkish law, so it's a different structure. So there are people at least academic experts on this field, which the Turkish government could have utilized. But instead, they are choosing people who are just sort of politically close to the government and who are lawyers, but who are not public international lawyers. There is one exception. And I was not naming this individual with his name because he's a very competent person and he's a very decent person. I don't know him personally, but I know some of his family members, and I know of him very well through common acquaintances, professional acquaintances, and friends. There's only one person in the government side which is involved with this case. He just declared it openly, so I can now name him. He is the only competent person. And this is actually the only good news about possible Turkey's intervention, because this person knows what he's doing. So if he is given autonomy to make rational decisions, so if more politics wouldn't be involved in telling him who to work with, which pro-government lawyer to hire or which foreign law firm to hire, I think Turkey might utilize this intervention and might, in fact, at the same time, build some expertise within foreign ministry within Turkey. I'm talking about Professor Dr. Cüneyt Yüksel, who is the chairperson of Adalet Komisyonu of the Justice Commission, I believe. Professor Yüksel has excellent credentials. He was a professor at Istanbul University. He was, I think, he studied his PhD in Stanford. So he's very conservative. So we have nothing in common politically, but this is arguably the only conservative expert that I respect as much as I do. So if Professor Yüksel, and he's a member of parliament, though he's not in the foreign ministry, so this may create practical complications for him to run the process. But if he's led to choose who is effective, who is efficient, who is an expert, or if the foreign ministry at least consults Professor Yüksel, I have some hopes for this process.
That's what I was going to ask you. Only one lawyer who is not even an expert in public international law is possibly in this case working on it. But if the possibilities that you counted now won't happen, how will this affect the case then? Because it is very important.
Yeah, it wouldn't. So this. Thank you. This is something that I actually haven't discussed in other broadcasts. So interventions at the International Court of Justice. It's not really a question of numbers, who's intervening and how. If such and such, so and so many states intervene, then this will have a positive impact on the case. I think the more states intervene on one side, this still indirectly, the stronger that position becomes. But still, it doesn't have a direct impact on the case. And the purpose of interventions before the International Court of Justice isn't just about influencing the case. By the way, here, there is a difference between Article 62 interventions and Article 63 interventions. As far as I could understand from Turkish Foreign Minister's statement, Turkey is going to file, it didn't file yet, but it is going to file an Article 63 intervention. Article 63 interventions are not about, let me phrase it from the language of the provision. Article 63, Section 1 holds that whenever the construction of a convention to which states other than those concerned in the case are parties is in question, the registrar shall notify all such states forthwith. Every state, now second part, so notified has the right to intervene in the proceedings. So this is basically saying, what is at stake? What is at stake is the Genocide Convention. So this provision is about if the interpretation of the Genocide Convention, and all parties or states are parties to the Genocide Convention with the exception of Japan, because the court's interpretation of the convention in this case will have an indirect impact on states who are parties to this convention, those states have a right to say something. Let me simplify it. This case is more important for Turkey than it is for people of Gaza or for Palestine. Turkey is clarifying its positions on the Genocide Convention before an international court, if Turkey intervenes. So this has long-term political and legal consequences for Turkey. So that's why it has to be considered rather more carefully than it is currently being considered. That's the point. So this isn't really about changing the direct outcome of the case against Israel or pro-Palestine. This is about Turkey making its position clear as a member of international community of states that it has this specific legal position on the questions of genocide and on the questions of specifically Genocide Convention. And of course, this is the issue of the interpretation of Genocide Convention is a core issue for Turkish foreign policy. In terms of substantive issues, so not issues about procedure, but issues about the content, Turkey has more experts. There's a relatively young assistant professor at Başkent University. I read his work. I can't recall his name. He's fairly competent, and he has his PhD from a foreign respectable institution somewhere in Scotland, I believe. So I'm sorry, I forgot his name. So, for example, if Turkey wants to clarify its position, it has to assemble a team, perhaps headed by Professor Yüksel, and having this expert on the law of genocide, having a procedural expert, so, perhaps myself and some others, to carefully work together with the people in the foreign ministry to formulate its positions.
Yeah, it's crucial. Crucial, by the way.
That's definitely missing. That's definitely missing, and it's the reason is simple. It's politics. It's politics and ignorance.
Well, another, of course, discussion is about Turkey's trade sanctions against Israel. Is another discussion. Thanks to Metin Cihan, I always recall him when I'm broadcasting. He made a splendid work of Israel and Turkey's trade relations, and eventually, after he revealed those documents from some sort of specific areas of trade, then Turkey decided to have a trade sanction against Israel. However, seems like it is not kind of directly an official sanction, isn't it? So when you consider that part as well, how will this affect this case process as well if we decide to involve this case?
So first of all, Turkey has a decision. It's an official decision.
It is an official decision, but afterwards, there are some documents that seem like
so true.
Yeah.
But the official decision is nevertheless important, and here's why. This is international trade law. and it's fairly sort of. I said this before. We do have more people who are more familiar with this process than the previous one I mentioned. And it is paradoxical because this requires an even different layer of expertise. Essentially, under WTO, World Trade Organization, and covered agreements, states may not have quantitative restrictions on imports and exports. There are exceptions to this. Famously in Article 21 of those treaties, and there are exceptions in the treaty between the free trade treaty between Turkey and Israel, and this is Article 12. In both provisions, states which I don't have the provision in front of me, but it's public security is a legitimate exception to the rule prohibiting restrictions on trade. So the issue here is, however, Turkey's reasoning in enacting these restrictions, these bans on trade with Israel. If I recall correctly, it refers to the Israeli actions in Gaza. But the exceptions do not allow, maybe you can interpret, construe it in a different fashion, but the provisions actually make a public security exception. So when restricting / prohibiting trade, cutting trade with Israel, if that's the political intention, I'm not arguing for or against this, just analyzing the situation here. Turkey, if that's the policy Turkish government wants, Turkish government should have clearly indicate a public security exception or a similar exception. From my understanding, from what I can find publicly available, that's not what Turkish government says. So that's the problem. Restricting trade, this can be a policy, it can be an effective policy or not. And as you mentioned, and Metin Bey shows with his research, this is violated. Ships change the course from Egypt to Israel all the time. But essentially, if the political will is to cut trade, then you have to find the correct international law to basically not to hurt yourself from doing this. And from what I can see in public statements, Turkey didn't. And this brings me to a very serious issue, and which also happened yesterday. In a meeting with the Greek minister for prime minister, I think, President Erdogan said Turkey is treating 1,000 Hamas operatives in Turkey. Then we heard news from press that an anonymous senior ranking Turkish official basically said this is a slip of a tongue. He actually meant 1,000 Palestinians. There is a lot of difference. If Turkey is treating 1,000 Palestinians, it's doing commendable humanitarian work. If Turkey is treating 1,000 Hamas operatives, regardless of what your position on Hamas, I don't have I think it's a terrorist organization from my assessment. But regardless of your position, Hamas is objectively considered as a terrorist organization by a lot of states. So harboring 1,000 Hamas terrorists, even for the purposes of treating them, unless they are also sort of detained by law enforcement, that can be construed as harboring terrorists, and that can lead to sanctions against Turkey. This is a type of a slip of a tongue that a president cannot afford. Of course, presidents are not public international law experts. They don't know this, but they should have proper advice on these issues, and they should be careful about the language they are using. Otherwise, there can be consequences. So unless Turkey sort of corrects this statement publicly, this is going to hurt us back later on.
Well, there will be another crisis on that because
it is. I mean, I was when I read this statement, I was on a meeting, but I was checking terrorism bombing conventions and the terrorism financing conventions, and there are certain provisions which can directly relate, which can directly lead to other states accusing Turkey for violating those conventions. Those are serious treaties. So that's one. And a second thing, this is just to illustrate how clumsy Turkish foreign ministry is with respect to these statements. Turkish Ministry on Foreign Affairs 2 days ago, on May 12th, issued a statement in English. I'll send you the link of the statement. I just heard that Nevşin Mengü basically showed my tweet on this in her show. So if you read this provision, it ends with, Turkey will defend the just cause of Palestinians until they have their own state in their own country. So what does that mean? Because Turkey recognizes Palestine as a state since 1988.
Yes.
This contradicts Turkey's official position on this issue. This presumes that Palestine is not a state. Palestinians do not have their own state. But official position of Turkey is, and you can find it in the same foreign ministry's website, Turkey recognizes Palestine since 1988. So what is it? Which one is it? Does Turkey recognize Palestine, or will Turkey support Palestinian cause until Palestinians have their own state in their own land? Which one is it? This is such a clumsy language that diplomacy and international law does not afford. This is and these people posting this, these people authorizing these things shouldn't be in official business. I don't know who is running Turkish Foreign Ministry's website. I try to be respectful in my criticisms, but there is nothing to respect anymore. It's either a very junior member of foreign ministry, in which case perhaps someone more with serious knowledge on international law and diplomacy should be in charge, or it is some maybe like an intern, or worst case scenario, I think they basically subcontracted this, gave it to a taşeron. So a media, an advertisement agency is launching this post. I don't have any insider information on this. I'm just presuming, because the language used in that type of interaction, in commercial media interaction, is different from official language employed by governments in official business. This is not that language. This is emotional language, and I'm pretty emotional, as you can see. People and law, there are platforms where emotions are affordable, but in official business, contradicting 30-year policy with a tweet is embarrassing. We just should accept that. We should seek to change this, regardless. And this is the duty of every Turkish citizen, because I'm a dissident. I'm very proud to be a dissident, and this is my personal opinion. People might like it or not, but this is all our country, and people who have no competence, no credentials, holding very important positions is hurting our government's policy. We may like that policy, we may dislike that policy, but as experts, we have to tell the truth. This has become very embarrassing, and unfortunately, no one is doing anything about it.
Well, we're coming to an end, but I have another, as we spoke before we start this discussion, actually. Um, Tuğba Bayar from Bilkent University, I think she is in
Relations department.
So she says that with the official authorities of South Africa, and she communicated with them, actually, no state that has expressed its intention to intervene uh, with South Africa. I mean, with the case, and this is a huge allegation, to be honest, because a week ago, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is saying that we will be involved in this intervention. And now this is an allegation that we should consider or not, but she is a lecturer in Bilkent University. Bilkent University is one of the best universities in Turkey. I don't think she would just tweet this and let it go, to be honest. So
Yeah, so Dr. Bayar, Tuğba Bayar, so I don't know her personally. I have seen her, as we discussed, I have seen her tweet. She claims that she has contacted the official authorities of South Africa, and she states that no state, not just Turkey, but no state so far has
okay.
contacted South Africa in regards to the case against Israel. So, but
Means Turkey hasn't.
yeah, but AKP officials claim that they are in touch with South Africa from the beginning of the case, even when Turkey claiming nothing about intervention. And in fact, conservative press and basically backroom talk, sort of there is the talk of Turkey providing evidence to South Africa in the case. So one of these statements is untrue. There is the small possibility of Turkey not contacting South Africa in regards to the intervention because it's a separate legal process, etc. It is likely, but either Turkey is in contact with South Africa, I think, as Turkish some conservative politicians claim about questions of evidence, or Dr. Bayar is correct and no one, including Turkey, has contacted them about interventions. I don't know. I cannot speculate, but this looks awkward. As I said before in various platforms, one of South Africa's lawyers is my professor, so I'm actually going to ask him, and probably he will be unable to disclose because this could be a confidential information. But I hope I can understand better from his silence. But my observation is, and this is also an observation, that there was recently an Antalya Diplomacy Forum. My research assistant was there, and the general observation in the forum is that Turkey and South Africa are working relatively closely in overall in the issue, not perhaps about the case, but there's exchange of information. South African Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Madam Pandor, sorry, I forgot her last name, was here in the diplomacy forum. She gave a talk. So I'm assuming there is some connection, but perhaps not on legal matters. More on questions of evidence, perhaps. But again, there is so much that Turkish public needs to know about Turkey's involvement in the case.
Yes.
There is so much contradiction displayed by the foreign ministry, by the members of AKP in the parliament that they need to come clean. They need to make things clear. My suspicion is that perhaps the members of parliament had absolutely zero information about international law. Members of parliament which stated that Turkey cannot intervene. But I think perhaps maybe the foreign ministry knew, and the foreign ministry simply stayed silent because Turkey perhaps was expecting to sort of mediate a deal between Hamas and Israel. But maybe Turkey finally realized that it's not possible anymore, so it said, "Okay, I'm joining the case against Israel since I can't do anything else." If that's the case, I think the government should be simply honest about this, because this is a commendable position. This is, I could be skeptical about certain issues in this, but this is something that is honorable. That is, Turkey sort of tried to resolve this issue diplomatically. This is good. But so much of this so-called interventions is in the dark that we can only speculate, and our speculations are based on previously available information about the people Turkey uses in these interventions, about the lawyers Turkey work with, about their general statements on public international law, which are very bad, to be honest. So the forecast we can have according to this available information doesn't really paint an optimistic picture. That's what I think.
As far as I'm concerned, I mean, when you follow up all the dynamics since last week and the possibility of those involvements for this, we need a clarification for that. I mean, public needs a clarification for that, because this is something that Turkey and its people are closely following it, because there is a war crime, a genocide happening in Palestine, and more than 35,000 people died, mostly children and women. So of course this is the picture is obvious now. So, and if Turkey has a stance on that, then they need to explain and make it clear for everyone, I think.
True.
Well, Dr. Kerem Gülay, thank you. Is there anything you would like to add before we close this discussion?
My pleasure. Thank you. There's a lot, but I can say this. We are a fractured and fragmented legal community in Turkey. This can be even seen in, we have one of the oldest bar associations in the world, and one of the most populous bar associations, Istanbul Bar Association. But unfortunately, the government, just because the elections in the bar association regarding the administration of the bar never ended up in favor of pro-AKP politics, the law concerning the bars have changed, and now we have a second bar association. This creates a further rift in the legal community. Instead of focusing on legal points, the politics of lawyers became a factor in the assessment of the quality of the work. And the split of the bar is just one example of it. Because of that, Turkey's more interventionist policy in the AKP era doesn't have sufficient support, because those people in that side of the political spectrum simply do not have sufficient expertise in public international law. Many of them were approaching me when I was a postdoc in Amsterdam for help. But some of them succeeded, but they are way too junior, or maybe they didn't build up enough. But we need more cohesion in this, and I don't see that coming. So perhaps, hopefully, this normalization process in Turkish politics that Özgür Özel and Erdogan, President Erdogan is talking, hopefully will lead to some reconciliation. But that's perhaps wishful thinking.
Well, let's be optimistic on that. Hopefully, something will change and slightly kind of change that we are now seeing it. So hopefully, with the other matters, hopefully it will come differently this time after 20 such years. Thanks, Dr. Kerem Gülay, for joining me today. I will follow this case closely, and if something comes up, any development, I'm sure if you have time, we will discuss this subject more. But till then, thanks very much for joining me today. Have a lovely evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, as we have seen now, there are a lot of questions to be answered. And of course, the government needs to clarify, foreign ministry needs to clarify what's literally happening in this case against Israel. I will follow it closely. Well, today has finished. I wish you a wonderful week. Friday, I will come up with another discussion with another esteemed guest. But till then, please do not forget to subscribe my channel, liking my videos, and also please do share your feedback. Feedbacks are very important for me. I read them, all of it, and I'm taking it very seriously. So please do that. Till then, till Friday, we will meet up at 12:30. Till then, have a lovely evening. Have a lovely week. Bye-bye.